So what's the best way to talk to an atheist? Well, the first thing to remember is never, under any circumstances, enter into a formal debate. Me against you.
Well, that's not a great thing to admit. You see, a formal debate is not me against you, but rather an opportunity to conduct a moderated discussion to which the audiences may judge the merits of the arguments offered by each opponent. There may be issues with this, for example, when charismatic personality plays over substance of points made, yet for the most part, formal debates act as an opportunity for a wider audience to identify the pros and cons of a position. I have noticed that there has become a great deal of avoidance occurring in the segments of religion which just want to avoid such discussions. And there may be some valid reason somewhere. However, it does become frustrating when you approach me or another atheist with aims at conversion, yet you will not do it upon equal footing. You are effectively denying that individual equal status to yourself for the period of the discussion. Dr. Taylor Marshall, I'm going to have to demand some very good reasons for this position of yours. Now, considering that you hold a PhD in philosophy, particularly religious philosophy from Dallas, if you come out with this being scorned by me for your own inability, it will not be me who comes out looking worse for wear.
There are times when we need to explain things, but the key, especially if this is a friend, a family, or someone close to you, is to enter into a story or a narrative. And here's what I mean. You want to listen to their life story. If someone became an atheist, that's a big deal. That's like making a conversion to a different religion. It's a lifestyle choice.
And there go your credentials. First of all, atheism is merely the absence of theistic belief. Thus, it's possible for them to have been set to atheism by default upon finding out the claims of theism. Not all atheists were once theists. Some were merely agnostic until the time where they came face to a theist themselves, or they discovered theistic claim and it was made to them and they rejected it. As for the claim of a lifestyle choice, there is no choice in perceiving the absence of evidence for the theistic claim. Therefore, maybe it would be prudent to understand what an atheist is prior to making videos on the absolute best way to talk to them.
And probably as you listen to their story, there's going to be certain factors that led to them becoming an atheist. And you, as a listener, using your ears, want to hear their story and identify those points of conflict that they had with a religious tradition.
And what happens when it turns out that for the majority of atheists, this turns out to be the inability of theists to provide evidence for their asserted position? It really is patronizing for you to pretend as if the main reason for the absence of belief is that atheists have a hatred of religion, when no, correlation is not causation. Hatred of religion could be sourced from the fact that it does all of this rubbish, and yet we know that, in all probability, it is a power-grabbing lie. You're looking at it rather backwards.
As you listen to them, and the best way to do that is ask questions. And don't jump and don't start using all your new apologetics that you learned from NSTI, but listen very carefully. You will begin to hear that they came into conflict with certain teachings or, more likely, certain people. Conflict with a priest, a minister, a pastor, a parent, a friend. Something happened in their past that prompted them to begin to think, well, what if God isn't real?
Ah, you very nearly had it there with that little distinction you added towards the end. Prompted them to begin to think, what if God isn't real? It got them to question. That's a very important aspect, and if you keep sight of that, you may actually pull through this video with some credibility intact.
Also, it's probably associated with a religious tradition that they grew up in or converted to at some point. So, for example, let's say they were Christian Scientists. Christian Scientists believe that you should not seek medical help. If you have cancer, don't go to a doctor, don't get chemo, etc. There are certain people in the Christian Scientist tradition who have watched loved ones, parents or siblings, die because they did not receive medical care. This, of course, spoils their faith and they turn away from God. They think, how could this happen? I trusted you, God, to heal my loved one, and it didn't happen. So you need to be listening for those cues. As you listen, don't be quick to judge, but just listen to the story. And your job as coming alongside them is to help them see carefully that their rebellion or their rejection of a certain person or a certain religious tradition is not necessarily a rejection of God Himself.
And you have just lost it again. Yes, the events can actively get a person to begin to question what they've been told is ultimate truth throughout their lives, or it can lead them to have a hatred of said deity. What it cannot really do is lead to a hatred of that deity, which then leads to the denial of existence of said deity. Even if you hate something, you cannot force yourself to believe it does not exist. You can ignore it, but you cannot just change your belief. If a life experience led them to ask questions, and then these questions led them away from the faith, the correct way to fix this is to answer those questions, not insult them or what they've gone through by pretending that we are so illogical to scratch out the existence of something based off of emotion. Now, there are ways, however, in which a person who lacks a belief in something may still hate the description of said thing. This is down to our ability to hold an abstract scenario. This is not, however, an admission to belief.
And by the way, it may be that they don't come from some weird, cult or weird Protestant sect. They may actually have been Catholic and had a terrible experience or had terrible teaching. What you want to do is listen for that and show them that as they move along in their journey of life, maybe what they're upset about or rejecting isn't God Himself, but a certain person, scenario, or situation. Okay, so that's the key.
So pretty much the way you intend to fool some of the most critical human beings on this planet is fail to answer their question, but rather fire out a red herring and chase down that path. Did they not teach you to avoid fallacious methods of discourse at the University of Dallas? All you are doing is telling people to make noise in a way which, believe me, as an atheist, will only act to make me more hostile. It would be the same as if I went to my GP to ask about my cold and they started to psychoanalyze me with Oedipus complex as the source of my ailment. It will just irritate me.
Now, what's wonderful about converts who move from atheism back to Christianity, or specifically Catholicism, is they often describe it as a surprise. And we can think here of the great convert of the 1900s, C.S. Lewis. He was an atheist. He was hardened by the war. He'd been in this world war. He had seen death and destruction. It hardened his heart, and he thought, how could there be a God in such a world as this? But he was surprised by the joy of being a believer in Christ. It was a surprise. He was a reluctant convert. But as he moved along, he saw that what he was rejecting wasn't God Himself, but a certain situation.
C.S. Lewis may have doubted at one point in his life, but due to the fact that he shares your own fallacious notions as to what an atheist is, I must question the sincerity of his claims and upon what he based them in. Across his theological works, he systematically gets everything about the absence of theistic belief, aka that of an atheist, wrong. One such way is how he conflates an atheist with a nihilist. C.S. Lewis is not a good example of theological argument, or a good case to use conversion.
And this is, I think, the most effective means of bringing someone from unbelief to faith or back to faith. And we need to remember that God is bigger than anything that we can imagine. And God can exceed our imagination and all of our expectations. And God, I believe, likes to reveal Himself in a surprising way to those who reject Him. And we read those kind of stories all the way through church history so we can have confidence. So again, the best way to talk to an atheist is enter into a conversation, hear their story, hear their narrative, help them to make distinctions, and then, of course, pray and ask God that He will bring about this big surprise. So there's some fun in this, and also just some charity and love and mercy as we come along and walk alongside these people who have lost their faith in God. Thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful. God bless.
This was not helpful at all. This sort of philosophical drivel will get you demolished in an instant with any non-believer who has a basic understanding of the principles of discourse. The fact that you are an apparent PhD graduate and yet have published this work would be shocking did I not know the general value of religious philosophy. It's like the psychodynamic field in psychology. Yes, you have to acknowledge it exists, but it's unsupported and damned laughable.